Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're absolutely thrilled to have you here with us. Before we begin, I did want to inform our audience this evening that if you need accommodations and closed vision interpreting, we're going to post the link in the chat at this time. Okay, so you can see the link for closed vision interpreting. If you need to access that link, please go ahead and click on it. Again, good evening. I am Rebecca Rydstrom, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations at Gallaudet. We host webinars on a regular basis to just spread awareness and learning. But this evening, we have a very special guest, not just limited to alumni, but we invited the entire community. Gallaudet is committed to a fundraising campaign known as the Necessity of Now campaign. And this is in support of the Center for Black Deaf Studies, which promotes research and scholarship and programming, and also to build our memorial on campus to spread awareness of Louise B. Miller and her remarkable story. It is an absolute honor to have Ms. Yvonne Black, the co-director of the Center for Black Deaf Studies, to present on this powerful unknown narrative. And so we know that your hearts will be touched this evening. And we also have many untold stories in our community. And so the more we know, the better. Again, we're absolutely delighted to have you here with us this evening. Thank you.
Hello there.
Well, thank you. Welcome. The floor is yours, Yvonne.
Excellent. One moment, take care of some technical issues. All right. So I am so happy. It's Black History Month. Really, it starts January 1st. And it ends December 31st. Black History Month is a year-round event. So I want to share the story. When I say now until forever, this is the way I'm going to express that in American Sign Language, because it might take forever to make this transformation, when we think about racism and other isms that are quite common. So I do want to talk to you a little bit about the story. I know you probably have some questions, so I'll try to keep to time and answer those. Our next slide, please. A mother's love, a mother's fight for equality. Who was this woman, Louise B. Miller? She was a mother with a beautiful soul. Standing next to her in this picture, you'll see her son, Kenneth Jr., and then the father and husband, whose name was Luther. Now, Miss Louise B. Miller, her passion, her desire was that her four children get equal access to education, the same as other white children, whether they were white, deaf children or white hearing children. So when her children was born and she embraced her son, Kenneth, she found out that her son could not hear. And so that took her back. Her world then completely shifted focus. At that time, they didn't have early intervention programs. For the white deaf children, they did. But for Black and brown deaf children, they did not. So as a mother, of course, she was concerned. That was at the time when Howard University students were specializing in home economics. And she was a Howard University student. So she was thinking about, as a mother and father, parents, how to support their children, support this deaf son that they had. They didn't know sign language. They tried to use speech and gestures to communicate with their baby. But you know what? A mother's love triumphs. Her love was there. And unfailing level of love for her son. It didn't matter that he was deaf. She moved forward. And Kenneth, and this is his name sign in American Sign Language, around the time when it was time for him to go to elementary school, she became very concerned. She lived right around the block, not very far from the campus of Gallaudet University, a few streets over. Over near the T in Northwest, about 7 minutes away on T Street. So she approached Gallaudet at that time, and it was called Gallaudet College back then. She went to Dr. Elstad and said, my son is deaf. I live very close, and I would like to send him to your school. So the next slide, let's show you what happened with that request. The letter that you see on the screen before you was a letter that was sent to her. And in this paragraph, she says, my son wants to go to school. She wrote a long letter to them with emphasis on the fact that she wanted to go to school. And then the reply was, you did not mention in your letter that your child is a Negro child. So back then, this is the way that they signed Negro in American Sign Language at that time. That was how it was signed, indeed. America is very big on labeling people. And so that was a label given to him. So Black, Negro, the word that we use today is Black. Your child is a Negro child. And that was what was said in this letter. So as if that really made a difference. So then they were referred to a school up by up by Baltimore. It was called the Overly School in Overly, Maryland. But she lived like 7 minutes from Gallaudet's campus. So this mother went up to Overly, Maryland to look at that school. So they got in their vehicle, got to the school, and she did not like the school. It was like a dungeon. It was very dark and poorly lit. So let me ask you, she said, if my son cries, what would you do? And the teacher said, we would put him in a closet. He said, oh, no. A mother's love triumphs. She did not do that. So they then tried to apply for her child to come to school, didn't work at Gallaudet. She thought, I'm not sending him to Overly. What can a mother's love do? Well, Kenneth's grandmother lived in the Philadelphia area in Pennsylvania. And there was a school educating deaf children there. So they were able to work that out. But she had to pay taxes, $1,400, equivalent of $14,000. While she's paying taxes here in DC, she still had to pay for him to go to school there. So as time went on, she felt that this was just not satisfactory to send her son away. A mother's love was being expressed here, and she was just not satisfied. That love is something that is so powerful. So she decided what she would do was file a lawsuit against the Washington, D.C. Board of Education. So the Washington, D.C. Board of Education filed against the DC Board of Education and Gallaudet for refusing admittal. The lawsuit made progress, and she did not win in the end. It was a hard fight, but the amazing thing is that she didn't give up. Mothers don't give up. Families don't give up. The Black community was behind her in offering their support. Next slide, please. So as time went on, that first lawsuit, as I said, failed. They decided to move forward with another suit. And the second suit, they decided to use Plessy versus Ferguson, the separate but equal lawsuit that had been won in Louisiana. So they then referred her to the American Veterans Council to assist with that case. So in 1904, there was a Deaf Act, or a specific doctrine in 1904 that talked about the fact in DC Washington, D.C. should educate Black deaf children the same way they educated white deaf children. So this lawsuit went through the courts, and the judge decided to give them the win. She did not give up. So Miss Miller won the case. You know, it's never a straight road for Black people. It never was in the past. It still is a very crooked road in order to get justice, but she was able to win that case. And that happened July 3rd of 1952. That was when the court ordered Gallaudet to have deaf children, Black deaf children, integrated there on their campus. But they did so in a building that was separate and definitely not equal, very much substandard. On the campus, they had deaf children, but these children received a separate education. They had old desk. You know, they temporarily, for a while, even taught them in the old gym. So they were segregated, yet on the campus of Gallaudet University. That school opened September of 1952. And the children, you know, were there in these substandard conditions. They didn't have everything that they needed, like the white deaf children who were being educated at Gallaudet. So with that particular lawsuit win in 1952, the American Veterans Council decided that they would work with Thurgood Marshall. And they reached out to him and said, you know what, the Miller family challenged the DC Board of Education in 1952. And she won that lawsuit. So why don't we use that same concept and then apply that to the system of education everywhere? So it is thought that Brown versus the Board of Education was able to take off and was able to be successful because it rode on the backs of the seeds that Mrs. Miller planted with her lawsuit. So now with Brown versus the Board of Education, they were able to harvest and to benefit and reap the rewards as a result of her winning her case. Slide, please. So again, with Brown versus the Board of Education, they won. Schools in the South were becoming integrated. So what do you think was happening here in Washington, D.C.? Did it catch on? If not for that, those 24 deaf children, where would they be? And the 4 Black teachers, what would have happened to them? Do you think that the DC Board of Education would have done something? Perhaps, the Supreme Court, they would have won a case in the Supreme Court? So when we think about how her case and the second case merged together and the progress that it made for us, it still didn't lead to a situation that was perfect. There was still discrimination that continued, and discrimination, sorry to say, continues to this day. So when we think about those 24 children, out of all those 24 children, there are 5 who are still living. They never received their high school diploma. And get this, they were on the campus of Gallaudet University in a separate school. White deaf children had a curriculum, they went through their learning process, they had everything, while the Black deaf children did not. So those white deaf children then were able to graduate and receive their diploma, and the Black deaf kids received nothing. And it's really crying shame, a shame when you think of what Gallaudet done. I mean, shame on them, shame on them. And the discrimination continues. Next slide, please. So as a committee, Dr. Carolyn McCaskill, Dr. Liz Moore, Adrienne Moore, all of us as a steering committee got together to discuss this. And, we thought, what? It is time for restorative justice to happen. It is time to give them their high school diploma. So it was quite a process to get to that point. I mean, it wasn't an easy journey. We kept reaching out to people. At the Center for Black Deaf Studies, we found, some plaques that Gallaudet had, but it was basically destroying history is what they did. So it wasn't until July 22 of 2023 at the Kellogg 24 Day, that was the proclamation that you see here before you. So we said to folks, come graduate. And they said, wait a minute, you mean I'm going to get my high school diploma? They asked that question. I'm going to get a real high school diploma? And we assured them, yes. And they said, you mean like white people have, and I can put it on my wall? And we're like, yes. I mean, if you could have just seen their faces, you could have just seen their faces as we gave them that. 70 plus years later, they received their high school diploma. This is definitely not a good piece of history, but it was so nice to see the way that they embrace those high school diplomas on that day. It's something that touched my heart that I'll always remember. Nothing can replace the life that they've lost, the opportunities that they've had, to build homes, there was one deaf person, to be able to get a job and then to retire and to have all of those benefits. So it was so touching to think about that, and then a mother's fight to bring children from Washington, D.C., who lives across the street, to fight for them to come and be educated. So think about the mothers, think about the fathers, think about the children, think about the families, think about all of the support. So it was definitely beautiful to see them celebrate Black deaf excellence. Slide, please.
Now, we actually did a few things, and there's still work to do. But you see the children pictured here. The tallest son is Kenneth. And then, of course, he has his beautiful sister, Carol Miller. The light-skinned little boy next to her is Gerald Miller. And then the youngest son is Justin. And so you see the four Miller children pictured in that first black and white photo. The top photo is when we honored their mother's fight and her legacy for all that she did in championing this cause and saying that the unequal education that these Black deaf students were receiving was not right. And so we know that this is going to be a space for Black deaf children. And so this was an opportunity for us to honor Mrs. Miller and to honor the fight that she undertook, not just for Black deaf children, but for all children everywhere. And so we see us now honoring Mrs. Miller's legacy and atoning for the past in the hope of creating a better and tomorrow. Again, a mother's love is something that has to be acknowledged, a father's love. To stay in the race, to undertake this fearless quest. There are four themes included within the memorial. They are as follows. The first is awareness. First, we have to recognize the struggle of the Black deaf children who experience this educational injustice. And we know that Black people everywhere experience this in many walks of life. And then also we talk about how freedom is never a straight line. That's the second theme, freedom. It's never an easy road to claim your rights to experience freedom. And so we know for Black students and Black deaf students, their path to educational equity often had many detours, it had many roadblocks. Ooh, my. And then the third theme is remembrance. We have to remember all that it took to win this fight. And then most importantly, the last and final theme is healing. People have a very difficult time with this, but we do have to address these historical wrongs. We have to unearth the trauma so that we can focus on and transition to healing. As we think about a mother's love for her family, for her Black deaf children, can you imagine the first time that she filed that lawsuit and lost, but she undertook a fearless quest, and she didn't let fear or Jim Crow stop her, because she filed a second lawsuit. And back then, it was worth your life to oppose the system and white supremacy. You could be killed for such actions. And so being able to align herself with like-minded individuals to undertake this fight is something quite powerful. And we recognize Mrs. Miller and her bravery. She was really a fearless activist. No matter what might come her way, she knew that no weapon formed against her would prosper. And so, again, the ripple effect of her actions is such that it's still being felt today. We know that the Miller versus the DC School Board actually set legal precedent for Brown versus Board of Education, which then led to civil rights. And then we know that civil rights then affected women's rights, disability plus rights, LGBTQ rights. And so, as Black deaf individuals were able to thrive, to gain high school diplomas and degrees, and then go on to college to get terminal degrees in their fields of study, it's such an accomplishment. And we know that we're not there yet, that in many areas we're still fighting for equality. But the legacy of Mrs. Miller is something we want to recognize. We know that this mother's love needs to be recognized. Oftentimes, Brown versus Board of Education is something within our national awareness, but we don't recognize that the seeds for Brown versus Board of Education was planted by Mrs. Miller. And so again, we are all reaping the harvest of Mrs. Louise B. Miller and what she planted all those years ago. And so now I really want to address this narrative from a theme of moving from pain to beauty. We really have to wrestle and deal with some of these ugly truths so that we can transform our experience, that you can move from something that is ugly and traumatic to something of beauty. And we also want to recognize that Mrs. Louise B. Miller was a shero who was so very brave. She fought back against injustice, and she did not let the powers that be move her. She said, "I shall not be moved." And so she knew that that fight for education was so very essential, and that injustice had to move to justice. And so we owe her such a great debt. We still have a lot of work to do. Racism is still present in our society all around the globe. So even though we had that case in 1952 all the way to today in 2024. And so I want to take a moment to thank Louise B. Miller, the 24, the Kindle 24, those 24 Black deaf students who enrolled in that segregated school on the campus of Gallaudet, as well as their 4 Black hearing teachers. At this time, I would like to pass it over to Nick from.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Heiko. I'm an alumni of Gallaudet. And thank you so much, Yvonne, for your presentation today. I've seen the presentation several times, but you know what? It's never exactly the same. I never grow tired or weary of watching your presentation. So I encourage each of you to take every opportunity to listen to her presentation. So at this point, I am really hoping that you have seen the flyers, that you've seen mention of the Necessity of Now campaign. Louise B. Miller has been spoken of in various places, and we've talked about it from time to time because Gallaudet has officially taken it upon themselves to do a fundraising campaign in order to raise funds to be able to recognize Louise B. Miller and her story. And I've been here on the campus of Gallaudet since 2004. So wow, 20 years now. I'm on the campus. I see it every day. And as a past student at Gallaudet, I remember seeing that plaque that's right there by the Kellogg Hotel sign on the back of that plaque. On the back of that sign is a plaque that talks about the Kindle 24 students and the fact that there was a school for Black deaf children here. I saw it and really thought nothing of it. I'm going to say for 17 to 18 years, it didn't really mean that much to me that it was there. I didn't know anything about the history of it. And that was true until Yvonne and others on campus here at Gallaudet continued to protest, continued to bring the story to the fore, to talk about the Black deaf history, especially during the Black Lives Matter movement, to really spotlight the history of what had happened. And that this small panel was something that people often overlooked, and it was just not right, that this history had to be elevated. Over the years, Gallaudet slowly but surely amassed a following who supported that. And now we are raising 23 million. That is our campaign goal. And I love this campaign concept, absolutely love it. Because when people think about fundraising, often they think about, we're going to raise money and build a new gym, or we're going to raise money and build, a new academic building, or something like that. And I have always wanted to help raise money for a cause, something that's bigger than Gallaudet, something that will make Gallaudet a better place, something that will really change the footprint of Gallaudet and will change what Gallaudet looks like and will change people's understanding of what Gallaudet is and what the entire Gallaudet experience means. So the Necessity of Now campaign does that for me. We're going to use that $23 million because we have 24 students who had the opportunity to come here to the campus of Gallaudet, to that school. What we're going to do, like you talked about the history of Brown versus the Board of Education and how this set precedent for that. We want to have a memorial space on our campus to remember that history. And this memorial space is going to be probably one of the largest landmarks to Black deaf education for the Black deaf community established. So it's actually going to take over the area between Old Gym and the Kellogg Hotel. I don't know if you have been here and you've seen that grassy area. There's a bench there where the Gallaudet shuttle stops at. That area is what's going to become this new memorial and cultural landscape. So we're going to connect that with our 6th Street Creativity Way project. So it'll be a gateway to 6th Street, and it's going to change the footprint. You'll actually see, be able to walk down that trail as if you're following footprints and see the story of this mother of these 24 children and learn about the fight for education, the fight for access to education for the Black deaf community. So they will tell the story through different panels that'll be set up in the garden, and it'll be right there by the hotel that's on campus. So this particular area is going to live forever. It's going to force Gallaudet and the entire deaf community to really think about different ways of being deaf, to think about the fact that the deaf community is diverse, that there's so many different levels of intersectionality that are a part of the deaf community. And one representation of that is the Black deaf community. There are many stories that are unknown, many pieces of history that we're not familiar with, and we need to do more research. And that's a part of this $24 million that we're raising, to find those stories, to unearth those stories. And that's going to move us to do some restorative justice work. As was mentioned, we did proclaim Kindle 24 Day when the 24 students came on campus to graduate and receive their high school diploma. Yes, it took 70 years to finally be able to do that. But that moment was a recognition for them to see their stories, to find out more about their stories. And it's led Gallaudet to continue to do more restorative justice work. So for me, that is very, very exciting. So it's going to be a beautiful memorial space. We're going to use this $24 million to invest in that space as well as other items. It's going to definitely be beautiful, beautiful. So often when you visit a school for the deaf or people visit international folks who come and visit the Gallaudet campus, they all go to College Hall and they'll do other tours. They're going to come to this memorial space. That's going to be part of the campus tour. So we're working with some other organizations with a goal of developing historical curriculum that really delves into more about who Louise B. Miller was and why her fight was so important. So again, as Yvonne mentioned, there were hearing children who lived here in DC, and they need to hear about this story as well. Those hearing children can actually come and visit this memorial site, get a chance to really touch and taste and see this piece of Black Deaf history, to really live it. So at this memorial space, we believe it will definitely have a huge impact on Gallaudet, a huge impact on how people understand the deaf community, and it will force Gallaudet to always be mindful, always be thinking about different ways of being deaf. So that's the first 13 million. Then there's going to be 10 million that will go toward the newly established Center for Black Deaf Studies. So that involves research, outreach, scholarships, and a variety of other activities that CBDS engages in. Black Deaf Studies is a relatively new concept. And I am really excited to see what they're planning to do. Because Gallaudet's place in the world, it needs to be led by people who are deaf. We need to focus on deaf academia, on deaf research, focus on having, deaf, the ML2 concept come to the fore. So Black Deaf history is a part of that and should definitely lead that. So Gallaudet needs to be there. We can't just have, one or two spaces and hope that people are interested and come to do research. We really need to set up, centers for specific studies for the deaf community, areas of focus where we can really delve into that research and then disseminate that information, information about that history. So Gallaudet wants to have a permanent endowment set up for the Center for Black Deaf Studies that's going to guarantee that we always have the money for it to operate, that they can continue to do their research and spread that research. So the Center for Black Deaf Studies, people have come to tour that particular area. And we have the opportunity, if you have the opportunity, please do come on tour. You always will receive a warm welcome, even though they're busy. There's always something happening there. They're always working on several different projects. But you'll have an opportunity to see, some of the pictures, black and white photos of Black deaf people and see who they are. So we'd love to invite you to come. This might be the first Black deaf person to own a car, the first Black deaf person to do a variety of different things. So there's so many stories to tell in those pictures, and it's absolutely fascinating to view. So that is what we want to do. We want to have this particular space that's going to draw people in for our students. When people feel like, I just need a place with my community. I just need to be energized and get my battery recharged and be with my folks. So that's what we want to see. This is going to be intelligence-based research, as well as pulling in the community for social events and for our students also to have a space where they can relax. So Center for Black Deaf Studies is definitely a part of this campaign. And we were able to establish the physical structure for that here at Gallaudet. And in addition, we have set up a mechanism to continue to add to the research and knowledge base, because we know that we're going to find more information. And once we find that information and collect it, we can disseminate it throughout the world. So it helps our community here at Gallaudet to shift the way that we operate, to change our worldview and what it means to be deaf. So that's the goal with raising the $10 million for programs and research for CBDS, and then 13 million for the memorial itself. So that's the vision of the $23 million. So that's definitely our goal. And Gallaudet has not really had a huge fundraising campaign since the campaign for building the SLCC building, and that was 25 years ago or several years ago. So a campaign of this size and this magnitude is definitely of interest. We've had interest from people in the hearing community. Sometimes people think, well, I'm not deaf or I don't sign. How do I connect to this concept? This story, though, about a mother's fight and a mother's love and a mother's desire for her child to just have an opportunity to have equal access to education, whether a child is deaf or hearing or Black or Latino, that's something everyone can connect to. People feel passion about a mother's love, the love that they have for their children, the love that they have to send them out into the world. That's something that resonates with everyone. So that's what's really exciting about this campaign as well. So we kicked off this campaign last October. And so we've officially, October, November, December, what month are we in now? Just been in a few months of this public campaign. We've raised over $9 million. And obviously we've got more to go. That's just in 4 months. Some of you may have given already. We'll be asking you from time to time to give again. You'll see emails, you'll see alumni events where we're talking about it. We're really encouraging people to continue to give to this campaign. For some people, they think, well, maybe if I give $100 a year or whatever amount that you can give, it's important. Because we will then replicate that. You know, if someone gives 100, then we can give a matching grant of 300. You know, so we'll continue to raise that amount until we reach our target. Because this is not just a small thing to Gallaudet. We don't want to wait years and years for this project to come to fruition. We want to make sure that we have your support. Perhaps you can give more than you normally would. We want to go ahead and get the project started, go ahead and do our groundbreaking. So we really need your support so that we can move forward and get this established. We can have this memorial cultural space and then have all the money that's needed for the Center for Black Deaf Studies to carry out its mission. Aha, okay, thank you. So we will have donor walls established, and this is sort of showing what it would look like. Your name would be engraved on the donor wall in some way. And if you want your name engraved on that donor wall, then you have to give a minimum of $10,000 to the campaign. So you don't have to give $10,000 all at one time. It can be a commitment to pay over 1 or 2 years. And also, I do want to share now that we have a matching gift for the campaign that's happening right now, where some alumni of Gallaudet really took to heart this story and said, well, I'm going to give $2 million, but what I want is for the community to match that. So in order to get that matching fund, someone would have to commit to at least $5,000 over a 2-year period. So they could give $2,500 this year, $2,500 next year, for a total of $5,000 by the year 2025. And that particular donor would then match the amount that you give. If you gave $5,000, they would match that. So your $5,000 then in essence becomes $10,000. And if you were able to get that matching gift, then your name would be engraved there on that donor wall as a legacy, a part of this legacy. So again, the money for matching gifts is going to run out probably this summer, because I see people who want to match funds so they can have this honor. So if you're interested in that kind of donation, I mean, you're going to be forever there on campus. People will recognize your heart. So reach out to us and let us know how we can set up the matching campaign with you. So we accept all gifts, however. So I want to say that every gift is important, even if it's $100, that's important. So go to gu.live NOW to make your gift. And as I said, I've been at Gallaudet for a long time, and this is the most exciting project of all that I've worked on. I've worked with the university administrators, and they think it's the most exciting project for Gallaudet as well. So a lot of people are motivated and excited and passionate about the work, about the design of the gardens. We've talked with the community, and we've talked with former students. As I mentioned, there are only 5 of those 24 who are still living. We really want to collect funds and be able to build this memorial space for them. We want to make sure that those 5 who are still living see it before they're gone, because they're all in their 80s at this time. So that's part of my personal mission, is to keep pushing this forward. And I think those are it as far as my comments right now. Again, you're always welcome to ask my team questions, to talk with us. Go to this website if you want to learn more, send emails to our email address as well, if you have questions. And I guess I'll go ahead and open it up now to see if anyone has questions. And Rebecca, do you want to come back and moderate the Q&A?
It's calling Yvonne back to the stage. Again, thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Nick, for your presentation this evening. We did want to open it up for questions. So if you have a question, you should see at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A option. So you can type your question into the Q&A chat box, and then we will sign your question. So if you have a question for Nick or Yvonne, if it's about giving, it's for Nick, but if it's about the general presentation, question right in the chat. Yeah, Yvonne?
I don't want to make an assumption, but let me ask, when will the groundbreaking occur? What's the goal, or what's the timeline for that? Nick, perhaps you want to address that question?
Certainly. For us to actually break ground on the memorial, we have to get at least 80% of the money into the campaign. So that way we can pay for construction, we can pay for the sculptures. And so right now we have about 5.5 million fundraised for the actual memorial itself. And so once we get that money in the door, we can actually break ground and they can start building the memorial. My hope is that we would actually complete this campaign by December of 2024. That is the goal. I know the community is very energized. The gifts are coming in the door. And so if people will actually make a pledge, and that is making a commitment that you will make the payment, and you may not make the payment this year, but you pledge to make it by next year. And so if we get some big pledges in the door, like $50,000, $100,000, then we can, through the pledge structure, we would be able to take care of that. But our certain hope is that if you're pledging less than $10,000, you'd be able to pay that off this year.
So some questions have come in the chat. Someone asked, will we be able to get a copy of the slides from this presentation? This presentation is actually going to be uploaded on the Necessity of Now website, and also on the Gallaudet page, so you can see alumni page, so you can see the presentation there. Someone else has asked, what's going to happen to the old plaque that's behind the hotel wall?
That's a good question, actually. We've had some conversations about that. And during the pandemic, we actually were able to talk about this a little bit. And what we want to do is to keep it, because we want to, of course, remember these past wrongs. I see Bernie Palmer is here in the Zoom room with us. And so we haven't yet made a final determination, but we do know that we may be able to keep it as an artifact. It is a piece of our history. We are in dialogue about where it would go. But in terms of restorative justice, we know that it's important to remember these historical events. I know some of you maybe have visited the Bible Museum. And there they have Bibles on display at the Bible Museum, but some of those Bibles have actually been altered. And so it's very interesting to see some of the Bibles that refer to things like white masters because they had particular Bibles that they would use with slaves to convince them to stay in slavery. And so these are all historical artifacts. We can't forget our history. And so even though we will have the new memorial, we do want to still keep that historical landmark. It would be moved. We're not sure exactly where, but that is on our agenda.
Great. Some other questions that have been asked. What is your recommended donation amount? This is Nick, whatever you feel comfortable giving. Donations of all sizes make a difference, whether it's $5 to, $1 million. Donations of all sizes are appreciated. And I would definitely encourage you to reach out to us because we can engage in a discussion with you about that. I make my donations through payroll deductions here at Gallaudet. So biweekly, I have an amount taken out from my paycheck so I don't forget it, and it doesn't feel painful. It's not money that I'm missing because it's already there. Sometimes when you open your wallet and you have to give a chunk of money, people will complain about that. So there are different ways that donation can occur, and we can discuss that with you. Again, all donations are welcome. You're free to decide the size. Again, if you would like to be honored with a wall, it's a $5,000 donation with a match of $5,000 or outright $10,000 donation. The largest gifts, $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 and above, they will have a larger area of recognition within that area. So we're in discussion about exactly what that's going to look like.
There are other questions coming in from the audience. One question is asking if we have other scholarships to support Black deaf students, or will this be our first?
That's a good question. We actually have 3 scholarships. The first is the Linwood Smith Scholarship, and that is for undergraduate students who are sophomore or above. We also have the Andrew Foster Scholarship, and then newly established, we have the Isaac Akbula Scholarship for international students. So those are the ones that we have for Black deaf students. So there could be more coming down the line. And for students from Ohio, we have the Chuck Williams Scholarship. Nick, do you want to build on that?
Yeah, so we actually have a few new scholarships that have come online. So I would say there are actually 6 that honor Black deaf individuals. And then, of course, we now also have this campaign. There are some that are permanent endowments. And so that means that the scholarships are given from the interest earned on the endowment. Others are a specific amount, let's say 50 to 60,000, and they just want it to go directly to students until the monies or funds are exhausted. But today we actually do have scholarships, and we also do have other mechanisms whereby we are able to support the Black deaf community.
Okay, and Marcellus Hartsville has said, this is for Big Sister Yvonne. Great presentation. This is Marcellus Hartsville. My mother was Mary Arnold. My question is, are there plans for reparations for the living students and for their descendants?
Well, that is a good question. We are on the steering committee having that conversation. There are no decisions that have been made in terms of what reparations would take the form of. We certainly know that last year we were able to distribute the high school diplomas. We are certainly open to listening to members of the community to learn your thoughts or opinions about this issue. I know several people have asked the question about reparations. Gallaudet University, of course, is federally funded. but it is a matter that we are looking into and working on diligently. We're not there yet in terms of a final determination, but it is certainly on our agenda. Thank you for asking the question.
All right, and Charles Williams has the next question. And he says, good evening, all. How will you reach out to the wider deaf community who have not attended Gallaudet? Many Black deaf persons would be interested in this history, as well as the upcoming memorial.
Hey, Chuck, my wonderful father. Much love been sent to you. Yes, we are not limiting this campaign to the Gallaudet community. We have a few efforts where we are actually going and making presentations. We know that there are people who didn't go to Gallaudet, and we want them to hear this message as well. Gerald and Lavana Miller actually hosts the Senior Citizens Black Deaf Group, and I have presented to their organization about the Louise B. Miller campaign there. I actually also went to Arizona, and there was a GUAA chapter that invited me to present there, but there were also non-Gallaudet graduates in that audience, and more events are coming online.
This is Nick. We also attended NBDA last year, and we're planning this summer to go to the NAD conference. And let's see, we're checking in with places like USA Today newspaper, Good Morning America. People have a spotlight on this the graduation of the 24 deaf students. So we're focusing on media and press like that. We have a group, Friends of Gallaudet, and we're hoping also to leverage Friends of Gallaudet to get that out into the broader Black hearing community so that we can take advantage of that as well. And so maybe they can adopt this place as their own. This could be a platform for them because millions of people use their platform, Black media, so we're trying to spread it there as well. So we're approaching this from several different angles, from the deaf community as a whole, as well as reaching out to the hearing community.
Chuck, there's one other thing I want to add here. I was asked by a group of individuals who hosted a Juneteenth celebration in Washington State, which is Seattle. And so they actually asked me to come out and share some findings regarding our research on Juneteenth and Black deaf individuals' contributions to that celebration. And so we're now working on researching that. And so we're trying to certainly open up this message to all members of our community through research, through publications, through disseminating information, through partnerships. I actually did a lecture for a school yesterday, and we are developing flashcards for students so that they can learn about their Black deaf, I guess it'll be like Black deaf trivia cards. So there are different ways to get this message out there, and we're certainly pursuing all of them.
I just need to let you know we have so many questions. It's excited that people are engaged and wanting to be involved. So this next question is from Edgar Palmer, who said, is there still a plan in place to link the memorial with the DC African American Trail?
Yes, there is, Bernie. Your work is still continuing. You pass the baton to us. We are looking at connecting and getting membership. And then we are also in dialogue to be able to document this on the African American Heritage Trail. So where your work left off, we have taken it up.
Okay, this next question is from Victoria. And she says, when the memorial is set, will that particular space be used for events? Is it just for folks to walk around and look at the garden? And also, I love the pin you're all wearing. How do I get one?
Well, I'll let Nick talk about the pin, but I can say that the memorial will be a space where all are welcome. It is a multi-purpose space. It will be a space for you to sit. It will be a space for you to read. It has small areas where you can gather. There will be activities that will be hosted in the space. You'll be able to have lecture series hosted there. It will also be a space where you can just come and sit and take a break, reflect, meditate. It will also be a space where we can host dialogues, right? Where we can come to and have some courageous conversations. So, yes, you can walk through the garden, but we also, of course, as Bernie mentioned, we're trying to connect this to the African American Heritage Trail in DC. There are over 200 sites all across the District of Columbia related to the history of the African American community. And we want our memorial garden to be connected to that trail, so that the Louise B. Miller history can be a part of that trail. And you can actually walk from her home because her home is actually already on the African American Heritage Trail. And so it will be a place of reflection, a place of study. And now, Nick, you tell them how they can get a pen.
So this particular pen, the necessity of now, hold it up closer to the camera so you can all see it. It's a magnetic pen, comes in 2 pieces, so you don't ruin your clothes when you wear it. So we are giving those out at various events. We have them here on campus. When we see folks, we hand them out. So there's no set procedure for getting it. If people have discussions in classes, or it's not like if people give a certain amount, or if they give a certain amount, we do include the pen in the letter to thank them for that. So my team has been doing that as well. Come to Gallaudet, visit Center for Black Deaf Studies. Come to any event that we host and you'll be able to get a pen.
And Nick, let me just add, if people make a donation, will they get a pen?
Right now, I don't have enough pens for that, but we'll have to talk about how to set up a system and a process for that to happen. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. So tomorrow or Monday, we'll have a discussion about that. And we'll definitely have to deliver more because I think I'm down to my last 3 or 4. I had a huge bag of them and I think I have 3 left. So yes, we will definitely figure something out.
Okay, well, look at me getting in trouble.
Our next question is from Jermaine Williams, who says, I'm a Black Deaf student. I'm an alumni of the Arkansas School for the Deaf, class of 2004. That's also a Southern School for the Deaf. I'm also the grandson of Black Deaf adults who attended the Texas Blind, Deaf, and Orphanage, affectionately known as BDO. So I guess my question is more connected to the scholarship for our young Black Deaf youth. How will the details of this scholarship be distributed? And how can I, as a Black Deaf individual, make sure that the entire campaign is distributed to our communities?
Well, so for the scholarship aspect of this campaign, as we mentioned, there are actually 2 different ways to set up a scholarship. One is for it to be an endowment, and the other is just to have a certain amount of money set aside, and then that money is allocated until it runs out. But you can work through Gallaudet's financial aid office, and for those particular scholarships, when those students come to Gallaudet, the campaign isn't like set up as a national scholarship program where like, oh, you're going to go to George Washington University. It is specifically for Gallaudet University. So students have to apply, they have to be admitted, and then the financial aid office will make awards. And it's complicated because, of course, it depends on your GPA and there are certain criteria that you have to meet. But as Yvonne mentioned, like the Chuck Williams Scholarship has specific criteria. You have to be from Ohio. And so the financial aid office will look at particular students who meet this criteria. And if the criteria has been met, the scholarship will be awarded. But the financial aid office is responsible for making those awards.
Hi there, Jermaine. Being from the South, just wanted to give you a shout out. I definitely understand that there is a need. We do have, I am on a committee, the Dr. Glenn Anderson Scholarship Committee, that's opened to folks who need financial assistance. And wherever you are, you can receive that money. And I believe the announcements occur in April. And secondly, just talking about Center for Black Deaf Studies, if you take courses and you're interested in a major, we do have scholarships for those who are taking courses in Black Deaf Studies as a minor. So there is criteria, and if people take those courses, you can receive funds to take those courses, whether it's some of the courses I would have to say are online, others you can take through the summer. So that's one avenue as well.
So let's see if we can take two more questions and then we'll wrap up. There's just a question from someone saying that they checked the Gallaudet giving page and they didn't see a real time thermometer as to how many gifts have come in the door for the Necessity of Now campaign. Can you speak to that, Nick?
Right, it's updated. And if it's a small donation, it might not show up on that thermostat. So we have to, like, every week go in and, move the needle a little bit. Sometimes it's month by month. So through the donation page, it does show what's been given. If somebody sends us a check, it doesn't go through this online page, so it's not shown there. Some people will wire money. If people have money deducted from their paychecks on a biweekly basis, that isn't shown there. So donations come in the door and they flow in from a variety of different places. So this is only showing the online, and every week we update the thermostat to show that.
This is my favorite question of the evening, and this is from Gerald Miller, Louise B. Miller's son. And he said, when everything is all said and done, can you please invite Barack Obama to come celebrate with us?
Nick, you've got a job to do. The challenge has put out there. Nick has got a job to do. Kubi Rashid, are you in the room? Provost Rashid, are you down with that?
And Nick is saying, I'm going to assign that task to Bobby. Now, Rebecca, thank you all so much for sharing so passionately about Louise B. Miller. We were blessed this evening to have you share her story with us to increase awareness. And so I want to thank our audience for coming this evening.
Yes, and I definitely want to thank the Miller family for being here in the room. Thank everyone here. Thank all of you for coming and watching us.
Wonderful. Well, we will share this recording of tonight's event. Take good care, everyone.